Hi, I'm Chuck Gifford, and I'll be reading you selections from this week's July the 30th Nantucket Inquirer Mirror. Our first story today comes from the top of the front page and is headlined, Certainly Worrisome, Alpha-Gal on the Rise by Dean Geddes and Maggie Viano. July 24th. The number of positive alpha-gal tests on Nantucket has shot up this year, rising from 7 in all of 2025 to 27 already, according to data provided by Nantucket Cottage Hospital, and it's only July. The total is still very low compared to Martha's Vineyard, where hundreds of people now test positive each year, but the trend is concerning. Cases there started slowly before rising exponentially. I look at the Vineyard experience, and yes, I'm concerned, said Dr. Tim Lepre, the longtime island physician and national tick-borne disease expert. I'm not sure how strictly comparable it is, and we're just going to have to see. The Vineyard recorded 2 positive tests in 2020, followed by 32 in 2021, 77 in 2022, 140 in 2023. That number jumped to 523 in 2024 and 742 last year. Lepre cautioned that Nantucket Cottage Hospital's numbers represent positive test results, not necessarily 27 people who've developed symptoms. Just because you have a positive test result doesn't mean that you present symptoms, he said. Still, the increase from 7 positive tests in all of last year to 27 in less than 7 months is significant, he said. That's real, Lepre said. Alpha-Gal syndrome is an allergic condition associated with the bite of the Lone Star tick. People with the condition can react to beef, pork, lamb, dairy, and other products made from mammals. Unlike most food allergies, the reaction is often delayed for several hours and varies from person to person, making it difficult for people to connect what they ate with the symptoms that follow. The severity also varies widely. Some people test positive but have no noticeable symptoms. Others experience itching, hives, vomiting, difficulty breathing, or anaphylaxis. Some have it forever, while others have the symptoms subside after a few years. For Nantucket native Thea Kaiser, the symptoms arrived in the middle of the night. Several hours after eating, she woke up with intense itching and rash across her body. My skin was on fire, Kaiser said. It was like poison ivy all over my body. The reaction lasted 2 or 3 hours. By morning, every visible sign of it was gone. It was like nothing happened, she said. There wasn't even any kind of subtle sign that my body had broken out in this terrible rash. Kaiser, who ran the Brant Point Inn for years, was bitten by a Lone Star tick the previous summer, but did not experience any symptoms at the time. This spring, she found 3 more ticks on her body. She did not immediately connect the bites to the reaction. A week later, the intense itching and rash returned after eating steak. I thought, okay, I'm going back to urgent care, she said. Kaiser was tested on June 29th. About a week later, the results came back positive for alpha-gal. She has since stopped eating red meat and dairy and said she has not experienced another serious reaction. I can't just grab an ice cream or have some cheese or whatever, and certainly I'm not going to have a burger, she said. Kaiser said she is fortunate to have access to other foods. Her husband Pete is a charter fisherman, and her son PJ owns a raw bar company. I'm lucky because I'm married to a fisherman, so I have lots of fish, she said. It's really not all that bad. She described the diagnosis as life-altering but manageable. It's just a matter of how you look at it, Kaiser said. The hardest part, she said, is not knowing how long the allergy will last. The only time I get a little glum about it is when I think that this could be for a very, very long time, she said. It's not like you can say, I can deal with this for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and then it'll be over. That's not the case. People who have tested positive and experienced symptoms should have antihistamines like an EpiPen available, Lepre said. Kaiser was prescribed EpiPens, and plans to keep one in her car even though her reactions have not included trouble breathing. The condition is treated like other allergic reactions, Lepre said. There's no established cure, although researchers are studying ways to reduce the body's response, as it varies so much from person to person. Nobody knows how to predict, is it going to be significant or insignificant for this person, he said. Lepre also said the drought conditions appeared to have reduced the number of deer ticks island-wide, and he has seen far fewer cases of Lyme disease, babiosis, and anaplasmosis, which they cause. Estimating the Lone Star population is more difficult, but still he believes there are fewer on Nantucket than on Martha's Vineyard. I don't know that we're going to see the numbers they have on the vineyard because we don't have those numbers of Lone Star ticks, he said. We've just got to see because this is a relatively new thing. Nantucket does have many of the same conditions that help the Lone Star tick spread on Martha's Vineyard. Both islands have the densest deer population in the state and wide areas of low brush, conservation land, and other habitats that ticks love. Lone Star ticks are also more active than deer ticks. Kaiser recalled seeing one race up her arm as she rushed to get it off. What's so freaky about this tick is it's so aggressive, she said. It's kind of alarming. It's almost like a sci-fi thing. Lepre said that he sees similarities between the emergence of alpha gale and Nantucket's first experience with babiosis over 50 years ago. It's the same scenario, he said. This is a new sort of thing that's running through the community. But he said the public should not panic or assume every rash or stomach issue is connected to alpha-gal. It's not a horseman of the apocalypse, Lepre said, but it certainly is worrisome. Our next story from the front page is headlined, Man Charged with Assault in Vigil Shoving Incident by Kay Quigley, July 28th. A 62-year-old man accused of pushing a 69-year-old woman to the ground during Saturday night's indivisible Nantucket candlelight vigil and protest is being charged with assault and battery on a person over 60 years old and disorderly conduct. Lee M. Kennedy, 62, is scheduled to be arraigned on the charges in Nantucket District Court September 8th, according to court filings. Kennedy stands accused of forcefully pushing his way into a line of marching protesters, saying things like, quote, "You people are crazy," end quote, before knocking down 69-year-old Laura Anderson off her feet and onto the sidewalk across from the Nantucket Yacht Club. He forged down the line of people. Laura got a huge push, and she went down like a pile of bricks, Indivisible organizer Allison Forsgren said on Saturday. I've lived on this island for 46 years, Anderson told the Inquirer Mirror after the incident. To have this happen is a really sad situation. The incident took place at the end of an Ice Out demonstration organized by Indivisible Nantucket, in which several dozen people gathered at Children's Beach before marching through downtown with candles to honor two men killed by immigration agents on the mainland earlier this month, and protest immigration enforcement tactics under President Donald Trump. The group has held several protests in the past without incident dating back to 2017. Saturday's incident marked the first time one had turned violent. Kennedy was immediately apprehended by police after the incident. Members of the Nantucket Police Department, including 3 police officers and 9 community service officers, were present for security detail, Police Lieutenant Angus McVicker said. At approximately 8:27 p.m., the supervisor assigned to the event witnessed a disturbance as the group approached Whalers Lane on South Beach Street. The supervisor witnessed one of the vigil's participants fall to the ground and observed a male arguing with other participants. The supervisor took immediate action by separating and identifying all individuals involved, McVicker said in the statement. Kennedy was later seen giving a statement to police at the scene before being released. Forsgren and other participants emphasized that this demonstration was meant to be peaceful. No chanting took place, and those taking part were not acting disorderly other witnesses said. We just walked around with candles, Forgren said, and invited people to join us, and a lot of people did who were sympathetic. The vigil was held to honor Johann Sebastian Guerrero, a 25-year-old Colombian national, and Lorenzo Salgado Urojo, a 52-year-old Mexican builder, both shot dead by immigration enforcement agents while inside their vehicles earlier this month. Sebastian Guerrero was killed not far from his home in Biddeford, Maine, July 13th, while on his way to work. A week earlier, Salgado Urojo was shot in his work van during a traffic stop in Houston, Texas. Those leading the march during Saturday's demonstration held signs reading, "Justice for Johann, Justice for Lorenzo, and Justice for all." We're gathered again, quote, "We're gathered again, unfortunately, to mourn and make tribute to more innocent people who have been gunned down by out-of-control ICE thugs," end quote, Indivisible organizer Willie LeMay said ahead of the march. The organization had previously held a similar demonstration in memory of Renee Good, who was killed by ICE agents on a wintry morning, January 7th, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm a little appalled that we're doing this again, but here we are, LeMay said. Also speaking before the demonstration started was the Reverend Max Wolf of St. Paul's Episcopal Church. With a microphone in hand, he denounced the demonization of others and showed sympathy for immigrants suffering at the hands of ICE. To live in fear like that is so un-American. It just distresses me, Wolf said. But yet, I maintain hope because of people like you, he said to the crowd, people I know on this island that will somehow, in our lifetime, overcome this. Our next story, the last from the front page, is headlined, Land Bank Lukewarm on Public Equestrian Facility by Dean Geddes, July 29th. Land Bank commissioners offered a lukewarm response this week to a proposal by Alan Warden, who is developing the proposed Hinsdale Club off Old South Road, to build a year-round public horseback riding facility on 28 acres of adjacent land bank property at 41 Milestone Road. Several commissioners called the concept interesting, but raised concern about its impact on the existing public use of the land and legal hurdles involved in allowing a nonprofit to develop and operate a facility on land bank land. But the largest hurdle appears to be the property's rare species habitat. Land Bank Executive Director Rachel Freeman said developing the 28-acre site could require permanently protecting roughly twice as much habitat elsewhere, about 57 acres, to offset the loss. I'm just not quite sure that this is the right location for this type of use, Commission Chair Christina Jellamy said. Warden proposed creating an independent nonprofit that would build and operate the equestrian facility, Milestone Stables, on land bank property at 41 Milestone Road, which would be next to the planned private club. The club would provide an initial $2.5 million, including $2 million for construction and $500,000 for programming and horses, Warden said. The facility would be open to the public year-round, with no time reserved exclusively for Hinsdale Club members, he said. People who could afford riding fees would pay, while scholarships would be offered to island families, a model similar to Nantucket Community Sailing, he said. The programming could include riding lessons for children and adults, after-school activities, and therapeutic and adaptive riding. Commissioner Neil Patterson, who also raised concerns about Article 97 of the state constitution, which protects public land acquired for conservation and recreation. A long-term lease or change in use could be considered a transfer of protected public land, potentially requiring approval from voters at town meeting and a 2/3 vote of the state legislature, Patterson said. I'm not really comfortable standing up for a private club, public-private club, taking public land at town meeting to say this is a fantastic idea, Patterson said. Warden pushed back on that, saying the property would be operated entirely by a public nonprofit and that club members would have no special rights to use it. There is no reserved time, he said. There is no calendar when it is only available to members. It's 100% available to the public. Commissioners also expressed concern about the changing the character of the property, already heavily used by walkers, bicyclists, and dog owners. Jelemy said that the property is surrounded by many homes and gives nearby residents a place to walk in the woods. Turning it into an equestrian facility, she said, would require that general use with one would replace that general use with one focused mainly on those interested in horse riding. Worden said the existing walking and bicycle trails could be preserved and incorporated into the project. The facility could also connect with the nearby Discovery Playground on Old South Road and the trail running along the former railroad corridor, he said. Questions were also raised about the project's cost. Patterson said that $2 million appeared unrealistic for clearing the land and constructing roads, drainage systems, and buildings. Worden acknowledged that the full price could be considerably higher and said that the club had not yet completed detail engineering, legal, or environmental work. He said he's seeking guidance from the Commission before investing significant time and money into studying the proposal. Commissioners did not vote on the project. They agreed Worden could continue speaking with Land Bank staff about the obstacles, although several suggested he consider another location. Worden said proximity to the future Hinsdale Club location was important, but he did not rule out considering another site. Hard problems get solved by digging in and going down a lot of rabbit holes and then eventually trying to find a little light, he said. Our next story is headlined, Island's First Black-Owned Summer Cottage Marking 100 Years by Francis Cartman. July 27th. Windsor Cottage at 58 Prospect Street, Nantucket's first black-owned summer home, is a century old this year, and descendants and friends of Mabel and John Carter and their family are gathering at the Nantucket Whaling Museum August 8th to celebrate. In 1925, Mabel Pugh Carter of Philadelphia came with a fellow seamstress to Nantucket to do some work for summer residents. She was enchanted with the island because it reminded her of her original home on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Returning to Philadelphia, she convinced her husband John Carter, a postal worker, that they too should have a summer home on Nantucket as a retreat from uncomfortable city summers. The next year, John purchased a piece of land across the street from Mill Hill Park and built the house that generations of the family have occupied ever since. The Carters named it Windsor Cottage after Mabel's hometown in Windsor, North Carolina. It was the first black-owned summer cottage on the island, and over the years it has offered a place to stay not only to John and Mabel's children and grandchildren, but to black visitors to the island who could find no other accommodations. It was also a gathering place for black college students with summer jobs on Nantucket. The Carter daughters, Florence and Isabel, created Nantucket's first takeout lunches, selling lunch boxes from the porch of Windsor Cottage and later moving to Florabelle Carter's boxed lunch business downtown to 23 Federal Street. Windsor Cottage remains in the hands of John and Mabel Carter's descendants to this day, and the Carter family burial plot in the nearby cemetery was featured in the 2025 documentary film Nantucket's Historic Colored Cemetery, Stories Told by Nantucketers. Granddaughter Isabel Carter Stewart and great-grandson Carter Stewart narrate the family story in the film that was featured on June 29, 2026 at the Roxbury International Film Festival in Boston. Isabel, a former trustee of the Nantucket Historical Association, currently owns Windsor Cottage, which is also enjoyed by her sons and their families. Our next story is headlined, Preserving Nantucket's History One Quarterboard at a Time by Margaret Viano, July 30th. Given the gray shingles and light clapboard trim, quite a few Nantucket houses look very much the same. One thing that differentiates them, however, is their names, often displayed over the front door on a quarterboard, a tradition that traces its history back to sailing days. The name gives the house its sense of character, while the quarterboard, depending on the shape, size, color, and lettering, gives the name its character. Island native Kelly Emery grew up surrounded by this tradition, and during the COVID-19 pandemic, he decided to create Nantucket Quarterboard Company, turning one of the island's most recognizable customs into a business rooted in its local history and craftsmanship. I wanted to start my own business, and I wanted to have a strong connection to Nantucket, Emery said. The products are made on island. To me, it's important that a local business is making quarterboards because they are such a unique part of the island's history. Quarterboards have deep maritime roots. Originally, they were mounted on the aft quarter of ships to display their names and identify which were legitimate and which were pirate ships. On Nantucket, where shipwrecks were once a frequent occurrence, just offshore, salvaged quarterboards eventually evolved into decorative house signs that have become an island tradition. We're lucky on island because we have so much preserved architectural history, Emery said. Aside from just carrying on a tradition of naming your house, you can see that there's a lot of examples of how quarterboards looked in previous generations. Historical records preserved after centuries guide much of Emery's work. I try to model my designs using historical antecedent evidence, which is easy to find on island because we have plenty, he said. Although quarterboards have been a part of Nantucket's culture for generations, crafting them professionally required its own education. Emery previously worked at Cisco Brewers and as a music teacher at Nantucket Public Schools. As demand for his quarterboards steadily increased, he left his other jobs behind. I decided to go all in on quarterboards because it was just starting to work, he said. 5 years later, Nantucket Quarterboard Company is on pace to have produced more than 400 signs by the end of 2026. In addition to quarterboards, Emery creates signs for local businesses, house number plaques, street signs, and restores aging quarterboards. While history remains at the heart of his business, Emery has also embraced innovation. He recently launched a new feature on his website, an online configurator, which allows customers to design their own quarterboards, house number signs, and street signs before placing an order. The website also includes a blog highlighting news and information about signage. What you see on the website is not only historically inspired signage from museums and ships on Nantucket, but also designs that I've standardized, Emery said. His catalog continues to expand as well. Among the newest additions is the Moby Dick, a quarterboard featuring three-dimensional whale tails carved into each end, and the Rothschild, a quarterboard inspired by one at Tristram's Landing. As an artist, Emery constantly gathers inspiration from a variety of unique places, both on island and elsewhere. I get a lot of my inspiration from traveling and going places, and I've seen signs from all over the world, he said. Seeing signage from Europe and Asia and South America is really almost like a language. It shows what each one of the cultures emphasize. For Emery, quarterboards are more than just objects. They are reflections of the places and people that create them. His travels have exposed him to different approaches to design, craftsmanship, and storytelling, all of which influence the work he brings to Nantucket. From intricate details of signs abroad to the way different colors or cultures use color, lettering, and materials, Emery sees each style as a glimpse into the community's history. Those experiences have helped him expand his own creative process while staying connected to Nantucket traditions. Rather than simply recreating designs from the past, he combines historical research with ideas gathered from his travels to create deeply personal and unique products. Each design blends influences from around the world and the island's own heritage. Recently, Emery was commissioned to create 30 custom quarterboards for the USS Nantucket, the U.S. Navy's newest fighting ship, commissioned in Boston in 2024 and now home ported in Florida. Funded by the Great Harbor Yacht Club, the project included creating quarterboards named after Nantucket locations. Most featured white backgrounds with blue lettering and trim, while 3 signs for officers' quarters were finished with gold lettering. For Emery, whose work celebrates the island's history, seeing his craftsmanship installed aboard a Navy ship bearing the island's name was an unexpected milestone. Homeowners remain at the heart of the business, however, and each bringing a story behind the name they choose to display. My favorite part is hearing the stories behind people's quarterboards, Emery said. I have a growing collection of stories that one day I'm going to release, but for now, we're just building it. Looking back, Emery credits much of his success to lessons learned through trial and error. The biggest learning experience has been drawing on all of my past work experiences and then being able to put it into something for myself, he said. I've spent a lot of time making mistakes, and now I get to learn from them and hopefully do things the right way. For Emerson, the business has become more than simply making quarterboards. It's a way to preserve a tradition while allowing each customer to leave their own personal mark on the island's landscape. At the end of the day, create because you love it, not because you have to, he said. That's pretty much why I make quarterboards. Finally, today we have the District Court Report, headlined Drunk Driving Charges Top District Court Docket by Sarah Roberts, July 29th. Drunk driving and other motor vehicle charges top this week's Nantucket District Court docket. Kevin Lima, 24, of 4 Pocomo Road, will have a February 18th charge of operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol dismissed after being continued without a finding for 1 year. A charge of negligent operation of a motor vehicle stemming from the same incident was dismissed at the request of prosecutors. He was found not responsible for Mark Lane's violation. Yosu Melgar Paz, 35, of 2 Essex Road, had an April 2, 2024 charge of leaving the scene of property damage dismissed after being continued without a finding for 1 year. David Lemieux Castro Jr., 22, of 67 and a half Surfside Road, was arraigned on July 28th charges of negligent operation of a motor vehicle, speeding, failure to stop for police, and failure to stop or yield. Not guilty and not responsible pleas were entered on his behalf, and he was ordered to return to court August 3rd for a pretrial hearing. Patricio Barbosa Rodriguez, 33, of 13B Gregland Avenue, had a default warrant issued for her arrest for failure to appear in court for arraignment on a June 1st charge of larceny over $1,200. Celine Furimura, 28, of Florida, had a July 4th, 2025 charge of operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol dismissed after being continued without a finding for 1 year. Dylan Fleischut, 33, of 13A Amelia Drive, had a default warrant issued for his arrest for failure to appear in court for arraignment on April 19th charges of operating a motor vehicle with suspended registration, operating an uninsured motor vehicle, and operating a motor vehicle without an inspection sticker. Anthony Holland, 34, of 5 Marianne Drive, will have a December 23, 2025 charge of assault and battery dismissed after being continued without a finding for 1 year. Alexander Sarkisov, 38, of 63 Cato Lane, was arraigned on a June 1st charge of larceny over $1,200. A not guilty plea was entered on his behalf, and he was ordered to return to court October 5th for a pretrial hearing. Yeser Lopez, 28, of 9 Windy Way, will have an April 11th charge of operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol dismissed after being continued without a finding for 1 year. He was found responsible for Mark Lane's violation, and a charge of negligent operation of a motor vehicle stemming from the same incident was dismissed at the request of prosecutors. That's all I have time for. This is your reader, Chuck Gifford, saying goodbye, and thanks for listening.